Hey everyone, welcome to Mind to Body Tutor. My name is Justin, and this is our first guitar video. Let's get started. So we're going to start off by going over the basic parts of our guitar so we can create a strong foundation so it's easier to progress as we move along. So, first, we have the body of the guitar, which is this big, weird, odd-shaped thing we have here, and that's going to amplify our sound that the strings make. So that's really its only purpose. And then you can kind of tap on it and it'll give you kind of a drum beat. But moving on. Next we have our fretboard. Now our fretboard is going to be very important to create different types of sound. So if we're on the first string here, that note is different than that note. And that's all based on where we place our fingers on the fretboard. And we'll go into that deeper in a moment. Next we have our headstock up here. And this is where all the strings are tied to the tuning keys so that when we don't put our fingers on the fretboard at all, our strings sound good. Next we have these tuning keys, and these tuning keys, those are going to change the pitch of the string. So if we take this E string, if we turn this, it's going to change how that string sounds. So that brings us to tuning. So tuning is very important. You can tune many different ways. Once you get a little bit better, you can tune by ear. I just use an app just because it's super fast, super simple, and there's a lot of pretty good free ones out there. The one I like to use is Guitar Tuna, and it gives me a good tune. I can do it in like 30 seconds, and I'm ready to play. So let's get tuned up. So now that we're tuned up, we're going to move into our strings and fretboard again. So first, let's talk about frets on the fretboard. So these silver bars here, these are going to be our frets. And that is what is going to determine how the string sounds and how the note and chord sound. So when we're going over these frets, whenever you play a string, you want to make sure you get as close to that fret for the purest sound. Now you don't want to go on top of that fret because then you'll hear that buzz. So we really want to make sure that wherever we play on the guitar, we want to make sure that we're as close to the fret and pressing as hard as we can. Now it's going to be a little awkward. It's going to take a little while for your fingers to get used to this pressure, but if you can really dig deep and practice that pressure, your chords are going to sound a lot better in the long run. So now strings. Before we go to notes, we're going to talk about strings. So there's 6 strings on the guitar, and they count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so from skinniest to thickest. But we're just going to go from top to bottom since it's a little easier to understand. So our thickest string is going to be called a low E string. And that low E string sounds like this. All right, and that's what you're going to be tuning to when you're in your tuning section. So we have the E string, and then our next, I'll bring that down there. Our next string is going to be an A string, then a D string, then a G string, then a B string, and a high E string. So now there is an acronym that I like to use that I've never forgotten ever since I was little, and that was elephants and dogs grow big ears. So it's just like it sounds, first letter of each word, that's the string name. So elephants E and A, dogs D, grow G, big B, ears E. And then it's pretty easy to remember the high and low E's because your high E is going to make that really high-pitched noise, and that low E is going to make a really low pitched noise. So next we're going to go over frets and notes. And with our frets, we need to give them a name so we can find them when we're talking about them later. So we have the 0th fret, which just means we don't have our fingers on the fretboard at all. And we have our 1st fret, our 2nd fret, our 3rd fret, our 4th fret, and our 5th fret, and so on, all the way down until our last fret, all the way right here for me, which is super high. Now, we have these dots on the board as well. And there's something special and pretty cool about these dots. it's pretty different for all types of guitar, but for Taylor, usually what they do, and by the way, I keep saying Taylor because that's going to be the brand of my guitar. You can't really see it. Can't find the Taylor right there. So on my guitar, there's a dot on the front and the top. You can see that right there, all the way up. And that is to help us determine what fret we have our fingers on. So we can keep good posture sitting upright, our guitar is against our body. We can look down and I can see there's a dot here. There's also a dot here, but I see the one on top of my fretboard. And I know this is going to be the 3rd fret, because if you count 1, 2, 3, that's going to be our 3rd fret. So same with our 5th fret here for me. It might be different. So some guitars like have it on the 5th fret and the 12th fret. Some have it just like this, where it's every other string, or every other fret, I should say. Sorry. But anyways, if you pointed to this one, I know this fret is the 9th fret, because if I count all the way up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's our 9th fret. And I got it just like that because I know I can count by the dots that if it's every other, 3, 5, 7, 9, that the 4th dot is going to be on the 9th fret. Now it does change that it skips 2 frets when it gets to the 12th fret. And we want to make sure we know where our 12th fret is, because that's going to lead us to the next octave, which we'll talk about later. But moving on, now that we can name our frets, where we put our fingers on the fretboard, it's going to change the sound of that string. So instead of this E note, we could have a note. And the reason this A note sounds higher than the low E is because we have shortened the string. So instead of the string being this long, it's going to be this long. So it's going to be a higher pitch. And there's some more theory to that, but we won't go too deep into that realm of the guitar. So moving on. The other thing that's cool about these frets is that if I don't put my finger on the low E string at all, we get an E note. And if we move up a fret, it's going to be a half note higher. So if we have an E here and a half step up, we're going to get an F note. And really quick, you have 12 notes in an octave. So if it goes up half a step, then it's going to go to the next letter in that octave. And the octave is A through G sharp. But it's not 14 notes, there's only 12 notes, because the notes B and E do not have a sharp note. So, for example, in our A, on our A string, we have A sharp, B, and then we skip B sharp, because there is no B sharp. We go to C, then C sharp, D, D sharp, E, skip E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and we're back to A. And that completes our octave, which is why the 12th fret is so important. So now that we know a little bit of theory behind why these frets change sound, we can play different frets and different strings to create a chord. And that chord just means, in its most basic sense, a group of notes to create a sound. And that sound can be really beautiful. So, just a couple examples. We won't dive too deep into this, but like an A chord, a C chord, a G chord, an F chord, all sound different, and they're all made up of putting our fingers on different frets on different strings. Now we'll go more deep into that in a future episode, but I just wanted to let you guys know how it sounded and how it should sound. So that wraps up our lesson for today. You guys have learned a ton. I'm so happy for you that you guys are starting your journey to your best life, and hopefully guitar can help you get there. It certainly has helped me. But you guys have learned the parts of the guitar. You guys have learned why strings sound different through different frets. You guys learned the names of the strings, the names of the frets, the effect that frets have on the strings, and what can happen when you combine the two. I cannot wait to see you guys in the next video. Subscribe in the link below, and I'll see you next time.